Right, we are live. So, hello, my name is Juno Losita, and you are
David Doub.
awesome. Nice to meet with you today. Maybe we can just open it up to you discussing a little bit about your work and yourself.
Yeah, sure. I've been doing comics for about 15 years now. I started out with, I guess you can call it my flagship title, Dusk, which is more of a traditional vampire, supernatural horror sort of book. I grew up in the 80s, so a lot of, Lost Boys and other influences like that. And I've just kind of tried to update it over the years as things change. And that's kind of what Dusk Love Bites is it's kind of an update of an old story, trying to put a new polish and add more meat to it.
Awesome. That sounds very cool. I'm definitely a big fan of fantasy and a big fan of horror as well. So, it sounds really interesting. What inspired you to be a comic book writer?
Comics is just always what I've loved the most. I mean, I've enjoyed. I'm a big, voracious reader of novels and all that, and I love video games and I love role playing games. I love anime. I'm a big nerd, but comics have always just it's been the one that just clicks. It's kind of like dating. There's a lot of people you're okay with dating, but there's the one you want to marry.
That is true. Can you describe your writing process from your idea to a finished script?
Yeah, sure. A lot of it goes on in my head. I know a lot of people freak out because I do outlines, but it's all in my head, and I'll just go over it and see if it clicks, and then and I just keep obsessing over it. And then once I have enough of a rough outline in my head, I'll start writing it out. And that gives me a little bit of wiggle room and kind of, I'm very stream of conscious sometimes with my writing. Um, but I try to stick with the idea in my head because if it doesn't stick with me, I like if it doesn't keep inspiring me and stay with my head, then I don't think it's good because if it was good, it would make an impression and last. So I kind of go through that process. As I've gotten older, though, if I have like a basic concept, I'll write that out because, you know, come up with, like the whole like, oh, I woke up, this is a great idea. I can't keep track of all of those anymore. So I'll write down basic concepts, but overall, I rough it out in my head and then I kind of just, you know, go to town on the page, which is a little frustrating for publishers and stuff because they want to, a specific page count, which I can hit page counts if you tell me ahead of time. But if you just let me go, I don't think about the necessary page count.
Well, that's totally fair. I'm definitely someone who has like a lot of ideas,
hmm
and half of them don't get written down and forgotten. So, yeah. Uh, how do you come up with new ideas for your stories and characters? Like, do you have any influence?
Yeah, obviously, I'm somewhat subconsciously influenced by all the media I take in from movies and shows and all that. Um, Dusk is interesting because it has elements of people's relationships in it. And it's funny, um, some of the relationship dynamics in Dusk has actually outlived the relationships it was based on, and actually, not to be morbid, but has now outlived some of the people that I were inspired by. And recently, I've been more inspired by uh, history stories and news stories and all that because I like putting a little bit of realism into it to give it more of a gravitas, if you will. Because I want it to, be more real, if you will, but still be fantastical at the same time.
Awesome. And how do you go about developing these characters?
Um, I, I s- I steal it from I can't remember. There was a big comic book writer. I want to say it was Mark Wade or somebody, but a comic book writer once said that you need to not just know the character, you need to know what the character would do in every scenario. Where it's like basically if you moved a character around the room, just a generic room, how they would respond, like if they, hit the table or, what books they would have on the shelves and how they would talk to people and all that. So it's just kind of, just know fully what they do. I mean, it's fun to be like, oh, Batman, I know the fighting, and this and that. It's like, no, you have to know, inside and out.
Definitely. And do you have any characters that are based on real people or experiences?
Uh, yeah, like I said, Eve and Ash, the two leads in Dusk, are based on two good friends of mine. They were a couple at the time, and they broke. Well, they broke up long after, and that's what I'm trying to say. I was talking earlier is the kind of one of the female inspiration for Eve. She passed away of cancer a few years ago, actually. So it's I never really thought about it much because it's not her, but a lot of her idiosyncrasies and her, you know, problems I kind of cribbed off. So it's not a reflection, but there's pieces of her still in, that character.
That's great. Kind of a sad story, but
Yeah, yeah.
definitely understand. Um, what do you think has been your biggest challenge with creating comic books?
Creating comic books is I've gotten decent at producing them. It's it's getting them out. So I guess you could say the distribution and the funding to a point. I'm more old school, so I do a lot better shows and all that. But now with crowdfunding and so forth, it's I struggle with that for a bit. That's like we're in the middle of me doing one right now. So, but the biggest issue is getting into people's hands. Like when I have gotten books with publishers and they were with Diamond and all of that, getting it into stores and then getting readers to buy it, it's because they don't know. There's a million choices. And so getting the word out, and I can't go to every shop and talk to every person. So ultimately, it's getting it paid for and getting it to people would be, I would say, the biggest challenges.
Understandable. And like, what age did you start making comic books? Like, what did you think you were gonna do before you did this?
Well, I still have a day job, so 'cause I'm with Show Enough Studios, and the rest of the studio they actually get to make a living with their art. Mind you, they don't make comics all the time. So a lot of times they'll do ad work or they'll do caricature work and all of that. So it's hard to make a living at this per se. So, but I always knew that I had to stay with my day job because it paid better and it would be more consistent in my writing. And that way I'd have a stable, life for me and my family and also be able to do comics on the side.
And have you noticed anything about comic books changing since from when you started to now?
That's that's an interesting question because a lot of people have worried about comics, over the years. Like everyone's worried about, say, digital comics. Like when you can get all comics legally digital, you can still get them illegally digital for a while. They thought that was going to affect the market. It really hasn't. I mean, has it grown the market, or has it like sorry, I'm getting long winded. Like say Webtoons and Tapas, they're hitting new comic fans and all that, and so I would say the more things seem to change, the more they stay the same. We still have our superheroes, we still have our indies. We just have a lot more different outlets instead of just going to the comic book store, which means there's a lot more choices, but also that means it's still hard work to get your attention. So it's never good or bad. It's just a change because everyone's like, oh, it's going to ruin it. It's not going to ruin it. It's like, oh, we're all going to become millionaires because we can get to billions of people on the internet. Like, no, that's not going to happen too. It's just the game stays the same. It's just the rules have gotten different a little.
I agree on that. And how do you use your social media to promote your book to get it to new buyers?
Predominantly because it's funny. Some friends of mine around the same age and all that, they're like, I don't want to deal with social media anymore. Or even people younger or older, they don't want to deal with social media. It's a lot to take in. There's a lot of a data dump. A lot of it's negative. A lot of it's manipulated. It's a lot of noise. And predominantly, I'm on social media for my comics. So most of my um, interactions, it's all on message but also I try to be authentic too. So I'll be, like, oh, I'm just, I'm not feeling it today, or oh, all this pushing, it's affecting my mental health. So I try to explain all of it, not only to be authentic, but explain it to, so other creators can be like, oh, okay, I'm not alone, because comics can be in a very lonely sort of endeavor. So I try to share, I try to be open book about everything I do with the comics, so other people can be like, oh, okay, or oh, that's good to know, or it's like, okay, yeah, we're not doing what David's doing there, just kind of help where I can. Or as if you're
That is
John
definitely
here, he's just on social media for my comics, which is true.
good. Do you ever get so like writer's block?
I That's a tricky one because I can write faster than comics can be produced. So I worry I haven't written in a while, but then I realize I've written so much stuff and there's a backlog in things. I've never had the chance to fully wallow or enjoy writer's block because I've never had to consistently produce faster than I can get the books out. So I'm sure I've had it. Just was probably during spaces while I was waiting for pages to come in, or think cut books to be lettered or colored. So I'm not trying to like, oh, I don't get writer's block. It's like, no, I probably gotten it. I just probably wasn't busy at the time, so I didn't, notice.
Well, that makes sense. But I have had talked to a lot of other comic book writers, and it seems like writer's block isn't as common as you think it would be.
Yeah, and I think now that you say that, now that I think harder on it, I think it's a condition of writers who have to perform on demand. Like, oh, if I have to make a book by the deadline and this and that, I think that's when you feel the pressure and writer's block comes into it. But when you have a little bit more freedom, like what you do with indie comics, I don't think it's as prevalent, would be my guess.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And can you describe your collaborative experience with like artists, letters, like any other people?
Oh yeah, no, that's one of the things I love with making comics is the collaborative experience is so awesome, because they can take my ideas and do it a different viewpoint. The best example I give is in like the first volume of Dusk. There's a very simple page where it was just panel by panel by panel, very linear, and it was just this guy grappling. He ran to his friend because he turned to a vampire, but then he's like, oh, grappling with not wanting to feed him and all that, and it ends on the last page of him finally eating him. So the artist goes, well, since it all ends to that scene, he actually, sorry, you can't see my hand gestures, but he all contorted and made the panels bend and kind of flow into the funnel to that last scene and made that last scene overlap onto the page. So it kind of drew your eye to the end results. So that's not something I thought of. And he just improved upon it. And even then, like there's some in that same story, the the heart beating, the thud, thud, bump, 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 and just kept getting more and more increasing. At one point, the artist goes, "Well, why don't I just draw that into the background instead of your letterer have to go back in and fill it in, and that way it makes it a stronger piece." So, I mean, obviously, I like to think I have great ideas, but it's or but I don't know what other ideas are going to be out there, and people have different perspectives and bring different strengths to the story. And I like to think comics is its sum is greater than the whole of its pieces.
Yeah, it is always very great to collaborate with other people and just learn other like views and other things you can do. And
Hmm.
just get that excitement when you're going to do your work. It's very exciting. Have you ever had to create a difficult scene in your comics and like how did you handle that?
Ah, that's gotten a lot easier for me over the years because I've been delving into more horror stuff that's personal. Um, so uh, I will say now that I've kind of broken through, like, okay, the best example I can give is I did a comic called Demons in the Darkness, about bullying in school with a horror twist to it. Because I graduated right out of high school, and a few years later, the Columbine incident happened. And I remember at the time being a young adult, all these older folks were all like, I don't know what happened. It was the video games or the rap music, very obviously cluelessly out of touch. And I was like, they don't get it. And I need to tell a story. And I came up with a rough framework. And that story sat with me for like 15 years until I finally sat down with and made it into a comic book, and I finally got it out. Then once I finally broke that barrier, I was starting doing more stuff like that. Like during COVID, I was stuck in Texas, and I was all like running around the house going, I'm just going to staple masks to people's faces. And I was like, well, I can't do that, but I can channel that energy and make a horror comic about it. So I've embraced it more and more, and it's become a great cathartic and productive outlet.
Yes, that's great. I definitely love outlets. I myself write, so I understand how writing can be a great outlet, especially when you can do whatever you want in the story.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say you handle feedback and criticism?
It's tricky. I mean, obviously, I prefer constructive criticism because I get it if I make mistakes and all that. I mean, but if it doesn't tell me where I went wrong or where I can improve, doesn't help me any. Like if you just go or it's like it's crap, that doesn't tell me anything. That just means you don't like it. If you can, um, tell me why you don't like it, that would help out more. But I will say, occasionally it still gets to me like, oh, ow. And I've had some good zingers over the years. When I first started, I remember reviews like, oh, I think the people who created this English is their second language. And I was all like, I don't know any other language. And my favorite one, and we actually put it on the back of the book, was is like, I think they took all the Kickstarter money and blew it on, drugs instead of work, editing and writing on the book. And I was like, oh wow.
That's funny. And definitely like constructive criticism is the most helpful feedback you can get,
Yeah.
especially when you do realize that you may have actually made a mistake in your work.
hmm Or if you don't
We're all
realize
human.
a different viewpoint, it's like, help me here. I'm not going to get better, and just shooting me down. It's not helpful. That just makes, that's
Mm-mm.
petty and all that. But
Yeah,
that's the internet now, kind of. So
that is true. And we're all human, so we're bound to
yes.
make mistakes from time to time.
hmm
Do you know of any common misconceptions that comic book writers may have
About comic book writers or comic book writers have.
in the comic book industry? I should say.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm still not understanding the question. Do you think you mean common misconceptions about writers in the industry?
Just comic books in general, like what common misconceptions does the comic book industry get?
Oh my God. Obviously, we still haven't gotten over the whole Batman from the 60s with Adam West. I swear, if I see another news article that goes zip, bam, pow, it's like, oh my God, that's older than me. It's older than, you know, we haven't gotten past that to where a lot of people think it's, that pulpy sort of thing. And another problem is a lot of people still think it's comics are for kids. Um, I was an adult in Texas when in a comic book shop I shopped at, an adult went in and he asked where the adult comics was. And he went into the set, it was shut off. And he went to the section and bought a comic. And then the next day, the clerk got arrested for obscenity. And the whole argument in court was by the prosecution was comics are for kids. And the comic book legal defense fund came out and they brought out all these expert witnesses, and the prosecution didn't bring out any expert witnesses. They just stuck up with the whole no, comics for kids, so pornographic comics is obscenity. And they fought that all the way up. They appealed it all the way up to the court right before the Supreme Court, and it stuck. So that's always been in the back of my head, and that kind of ties back into the whole, uh, what hesitates you on, writing and writing difficult things is I have self censored a lot, especially around that time because I was all like, oh my god, you can go to jail because comics for kids, and then that died down, and then now they're banning comics again because oh they're dangerous, going to corrupt the kids. It's all like, and in the 80s, we had all D&D and role playing games is going to bring you Satan, which Satan hasn't shown up yet. So I'm either doing it wrong or I'm not worthy, whatever. But and that kind of goes back to whole, no matter how much things change, they stay the same. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest misconception. And also another one, I can do this all day, is they think it's all superheroes. And it's all like, no, it's not all superheroes. Are superheroes popular? Yes. And they confuse it. Sorry, I'm really getting on my soapbox now. Superheroes is a genre of comics. Comics is a medium. And a medium is, like movies. You wouldn't say, oh, all movies are like historical epics like Gone with the Wind. It's like, no, movies are a medium and you have genres in them. With comics, they go, oh, like poor manga. Poor manga, they think, oh, it's a bunch of shonen action pictures or, romance shoujos. Like, no, no, no. Sorry, I better stop or we'll be here all night.
Yeah, I don't really understand the whole comic books is for children part because as an adult, I see way more adults reading comic books than I see kids. Even I myself have comic books.
Yeah. No, and that's
So
kind of
personally, I don't.
that's the dirty secret is like a lot of the core market, we're getting older and older. And my friend was explaining that the other day because, some comics are very collectible and valuable, and some of them that used to be valuable are becoming less valuable. And the reason why is because the audience is dying out. Like it used to be like Western comics and Roy Roger comics were really valuable. Not much anymore because most of those people are dead who like them, which is kind of a dark way to look at it, but it's a matter of things. So you still have people going, oh, this is worth $100. Sorry, the people who paid $100 died. So
That's great. And yeah, I might have comic books, but personally, I don't collect. Like, I'm not a
yeah.
collector. I
Oh
do
no.
like reading them though, and I would say that my comic books are more the childish type, you know. I like Tom and Jerry, I like My Little Pony. I like those things.
Oh no, especially the new the run with IDW, My Little Pony. That was epic. That was great stuff. I mean, the covers
Mhm.
alone. But I'm the with you. I'm just a reader now. I buy books to read and I'll then sell them to get more books to read. I can't put them in bags or boards. My stepkids are like, "What are all?" They'll find bags and boards just laying on the floor. It's like, "What are all these?" It's like, "I had to free my comics and to read them." Like, "You gonna put them back on?" They're like, "No, they're free."
That's fair. And I don't get other things about it either because personally I see comic books kind of the same way as novels. I read both.
Hmm.
I like paperback novels and I kind of see them similar. The only difference is that comic books have art.
Yeah,
And why is that really that much of a bad thing?
they're just
No,
different formats of telling the story. Instead of
exactly.
having to
Yeah.
use a lot of descriptive words like you would in a novel, you get the artist to do that.
Yes. What do you think the future of comic books is going to be like?
That's the $1 million question. If I knew where it was going, I could, cut in ahead, take advantage of that. That's hard thing to say right now because distribution is changing and AI is a big thing. I think comics will always endure, not necessarily in the same format. I mean, there will be sure some purists who keep it in the same format, but I think comics will endure, but they will never. And I know we all want it to be super big, but I don't think it'll ever be 100% mainstream. I think it will always be like adjacent. I wish it was be more popular than like say poetry. Like poetry is kind of adjacent, but it has more history and credibility and all that. But I think it's going to just evolve. And again, more things change, the more things stay the same. So I think that's the future of comics. It's going to evolve and change, but it's still going to be mainstream adjacent.
I think that they might not be as popular any of these times because of the fact that people have so many misconceptions about them. And that is a good reason why I do these interviews. I'm trying to get words out there. I'm trying to get you guys out there and just find more people who likes comic books.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. And that is the truth. It's just talking about it and making it normal and, make it normal everything else. Like people talk about sports, that's normal. And I'm always like, oh, so just normalize it.
Yep. Are there any genres or themes you have not yet explored but would like to?
I would say the biggest one that I stay away from is comedy. And I would really love to do just something so purposely funny and natural, but I'm not a comedian. I can be jovial with friends and make jokes off the cuff or whatever, but I don't know how to plan a bit and write out a joke and know the timing and the rhythm and reading your audience at that stage. So I am terrified of it. Horror I'm not afraid of. That's one of the lures of horror is even if you mess up, people still like it. People love horrible horror movies. That's a genre into itself. I mean, God, Sharknado is like a subsection of horrible horror movies. So, that's that one you can fail. But comedy, I think if you don't get it right, it's just awkward. Horror is just like, it becomes accidentally funny or, fun because it's bad horror. But with comedy, it's just like, yeah. So yeah, that's one thing I would love to try to do. And I've done fun stuff with things, but I'm still working in the trappings of like sci-fi and horror. So I'm still safe in my little comfort zone.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely one of those people who go to the theater just to watch bad horror. I love horror, but sometimes that bad horror, man. Um, I say if you ever get time, just do it. Even if you think you're going to fail at it, just go ahead and do the comic book. Sometimes you got to step out of your comfort zone and just take a swing at things. Even if it doesn't work, at least you tried it, you know?
True. Cool. I'll take that to heart. We'll see where it leads.
What so far has been your most rewarding aspect of being a comic book writer?
Getting comics made, finally realizing it, and just getting them out is just so awesome. I mean, that is the whole point is getting comics made. I mean, yes, would I like to make a living at it? Would I like to get more comics made? Would I like everyone to read it? Yes. But getting them made is just a joy in and of itself.
That makes sense. I'm currently trying to write a poetry book, and I feel like when I
Oh no, I
finish
feel
it,
bad
I'm
for
gonna feel
making fun of poetry. I'm so sorry.
no, you're all good. I like writing. I've been writing poetry for a while. I'm mainly like writing fantasy and horror myself though with
Mhm.
like actual books, but I'm not the greatest at it like I am with poetry.
Oh my god, no, and um there's this I can't remember his name, but there's this poet. He writes short stories too, but he does uh, poetry in Texas, but he does it with a sci-fi and horror twist. Like he loves doing like a kaiju poetry
Mhm.
or some other stuff, and I'm really impressed by it and all that. I just when I was making fun of the horror, I get jealous of other things' success. Like like I'll be listening to the radio and they'll talk about the poet laureate, and I was all like, "There's no comic laureate. Why isn't there no comic laureate?" Like that's totally has nothing to do with the thing, but that's where I get stuck on things.
It's totally understandable. And yeah, I like writing some horror poetry too, but right now the one I'm writing is actually about mythology.
Oh,
So
awesome.
I'm hoping to get that one and then go back into horror. Okay. We are down to our last three questions here.
Oh, the final three.
Do you have any upcoming projects that you are excited about?
Well, right now, as you can see from I have Dusk Love Bites currently live on Kickstarter. Hopefully it'll fund. It's at 25% funded, so hopefully we'll get there. Um, we're working on another. I do a Victorian penny dreadful called The Trials and Tribulations of Miss Tilney. I'm working with Pat Binder to do the next story on that. It should be a good haunted house romp. Um, so we're working on that. I currently I'm writing on a script. I'm almost finished with it, where it's a modern retelling of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, but I get really mean with it because it's all like uh, dealing with this nasty guy who's an incel and all that, and so very self-loathing. And this doctor starts turning into a woman, and it's not just a simple like, oh, learning your lesson sort of thing. It's a really mean modern version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Because as I told you earlier, I've broken through the barrier of doing difficult ones, so now I'm just like, yes, ha ha ha.
Well, your comic books seem very interesting. I hope everybody that's been watching today and will watch can look at it because it does seem extremely interesting.
Thank you.
What advice would you give to aspiring comic book writers?
To do it. The biggest thing is people talking themselves out of it, just to get down and write it. And also, I always say, put it into a more manageable chunk. A lot of people, I say this so much, a lot of people will set it up to where it's not possible to do it easily, to where they're all like, no, it is 1,000 pages. I'll never get it done. It's all like, well, yeah, if you tackle it like that, it's all like it's like anything, like like making a book or writing poetry. It's like, I want to write a poetry book. That seems so hard. It's like, well, no, just write one poem. Don't write the whole, book. Just tell one story and get that into a comic. Don't tell the whole story and get it done. Write the script. And then once you got the script, polish it, or talk to artists about it and all that. Take the steps. I know that I take comfort in a lot of times of those roadblocks too. It's like, oh, I can't do this because it's too dark, or I can't get funding, there's too many pages. All like that is just you trying to protect yourself from failure and rejection. Just do it.
That is good advice. And people sometimes like to look at things as a whole and be like, oh, I can't do all these steps when it can just like be broken down and made easier. And if you just start, you can keep
Mhm.
going. Wish not a sponsorship, but a good website to help with that is called Magic to Go. And you can put a task that you need to complete and how far you want it to break down, and it will break it down to easier, smaller tasks.
Oh, okay, that sounds smart.
Yeah, so anybody can really do things as long as they take the time.
True, I had to learn out the hard way. We didn't have website. I just had to keep banging my head.
Yeah, luckily we're in the time now where almost everything's a website.
That is true. I think there's a websites. Oh wait, that's Google. Ha ha ha.
Okay, and our last question, the one I ask everyone at the end, where can we buy your comic books?
You can get my comic, you can buy my comic books on for Kindle on Amazon. Just search my name up. And also, you can go to Global Comics. I have a lot of them there for free. You can also go to Nerdantic. They have them for free too. And Sierra Nova has a website too. And you can get them there free too. I throw out a lot of free comics out there, and it's like leaving out cookies. Like if you don't eat them, I can't I can't help you. It's like they're there. They're gonna go bad. There's already ants, so it's your own fault.
Awesome. So everybody definitely go and look that up. Um, one more comment.
Yeah, it's my friend Geeky.
Hey, well, thank you everyone who's been watching today. If you are somebody who does something creative, it doesn't even have to be comic books. You can get an interview with me by emailing me down at this email here, kingdomofhoursofficial@gmail.com. But I hope you guys all enjoyed today, and thank you, David, for meeting with me today.
Thank you as well. And then I hope people reach out to you and they get out here and get to talk to. I just happen to like to talk, but other people, they need to get out there and, take advantage of this
Mhm.
awesome opportunity. Oh yeah. And go fund my comic.
Definitely. Okay, well, have a good night, everyone. Bye.